Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you to Columbia University and the Care and Protection for Children Learning Network for giving us the opportunity to showcase our work with you. My name is Suhani Zaima, and I am joining you from BRAC, Bangladesh. Welcome to our presentation today on the healing power of learning through play, where we will share our experience with adapting and scaling play-based early childhood development, or ECD. Who we are. We are BRAC. We are a team of some of the world's most dedicated staff and passionate partners standing together for our mission to empower people and communities in situations of poverty, illiteracy, disease, and social injustice. We work in a wide range of sectors, but we join you today to share with you our work in education, more specifically early childhood development, focusing on play-based learning. We will share with you the story of BRAC's flagship model, the Play Labs, developed to provide high-quality, play-based early childhood development for ages 0 to 6. Our founder, the late Sir Fazle Abed, it was his life's work and dedication to providing education opportunities for all children, and that has inspired us and our partners to continue his legacy. Our work expands over many countries, but today we will focus on our work on Play Labs, which first started in Bangladesh, and its adaptations in Uganda and Tanzania. There is so much about the journey of the Play Labs that we would love to share with you, but to get started, we have structured our presentation in the following format. We will start with sharing the foundations of the Play Labs, followed by our iteration of the model, the Humanitarian Play Lab, developed in response to the Rohingya crisis in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh. We will share some key lessons learned with our iterations, as well as our advocacy strategies, and hear from our partner with carrying our work forward. We will be stopping after the Play Lab segment and the Humanitarian Play Lab segment to answer some questions, and we will have another Q&A session towards the end. Since we will be discussing play so much today, we would also love to hear from you. So we request you in the audience to please share your name and location in the chat box and share a favorite game or play activity from your childhood. I will also request our presenters that you also, as you introduce yourselves, to please share a favorite play activity as well. I will get started. So my name is Suhani Zaima, and my favorite play activity from my childhood was hopscotch, or ekka in Bengali. To help us get started, I would like to request Dr. Ira Mariam to share a brief message and also introduce the presenters for our first segment.
Suhani, it looks like Iram Appa is having a little bit of trouble connecting. So do you think that you can do this part, or should we ask somebody else?
I'm unmuted, that's fine.
Oh,
thank you, Devon. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Suhani. Okay. I was fortunate to work with Sir Abid for a very long time. Abid Bhai, he always gave innovation for children the highest priority. He believed that play-based ECD was one of the most fundamental requirements for children in the first few years of their lives, and that it was play-based ECD that could impact their lives forever. It was with this conviction that we started our journey of the Play Labs. I also take this opportunity to thank the Care and Protection of Children CPC Learning Network. The CPC Learning Network at Columbia University has been working over the past 15 years, building evidences and advocating for children and families. It is our great honor to be able to host this webinar with them. We thank the CPC Learning Network for the opportunity. Like Suhani said, to introduce us with a play activity, I will now turn to my own play in my own childhood. There used to be a story which my mother used to tell me. It was a story about a bird, Bangatuni, and that story was also the story that was told by my grandmother to my mother, and I used to love that story. I now have the pleasure to introduce the speakers of the first session. Leslie Patricia Hose from the Lego Foundation has been instrumental in the co-creation of the Play Labs and in shaping this journey of ours. Thank you so much, Leslie, for your support. Our second speaker is our good friend Cassie Landers of Columbia University, who has been involved in all our play-based ECD work for the last 13 years. Thank you, Cassie, for all your help and support. And the third speaker is my colleague Rafiat Rashid Mithila, who has worked relentlessly to do the Play Labs in Uganda and Tanzania. Thank you, Mithila, for all your effort. I now turn to Leslie to start the session. Over to you, Leslie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Iram. It's a pleasure to be on this, and I have to say that the work that I've been doing and the work with the Play Labs has been just so exciting. And I just to think about, what was my favorite activity as a child? I think when I was about the age of a Play Lab child, pretend play was probably the thing that really caught my imagination. And it didn't even always need to be with other people, but other children. Sometimes it could just be with inanimate objects, but definitely the social aspect of it as well was great. And I know pretend play is an important part of the Play Labs as well, as you'll hear more about in the coming slides and presenters. So what I want to focus on, just to frame what you will be hearing about the Play Labs now, is how we see play within the Lego Foundation and how that links to the work that we've been doing with BRAC on the Play Lab model development. So in the Lego Foundation, we talk about redefining play and reimagining learning. And what we mean by that is, so redefining play is really about changing the way that people understand the importance of play and the huge value it has in helping children develop the essential skills that they need in the world that they live in today. And when we talk about reimagining learning, it's really about making sure that we're working with parents and carers and teachers and school systems and institutions and governments to think about how play can be used as a means to improving the learning for children all around the world. So we firmly believe that learning through play empowers children to become creative, engaged, lifelong learners and helps them to develop the holistic skills that serve them and their communities and their society throughout a lifetime. And that's very much what the Play Labs are about. So in the early learning program that we have within the Lego Foundation, this is very much focused on providing children aged 3 to 6 with access to quality, affordable, play-based, center-based early learning opportunities all around the world. And what we really want to work towards is making sure that when we talk about quality early childhood development and education, that learning through play is really seen as a critical component of that. And the work that we've been doing with the Play Labs and with BRAC over these last 5 years has really been instrumental in shaping our thinking around what quality looks like for this age group in center-based early learning. So now let me start talking a little bit about the Play Lab journey and how we have been working with BRAC for the past 5 years to develop the model and to adapt it from Bangladesh originally, where it started, and then to the very, very different contexts of Uganda and Tanzania. And this work started in 2015, and in 2017 we added in a research component so that we'd be able to look at building evidence around the model and the way in which it was able to support the development of holistic skills. And that work is just about to be completed this year, so it's very exciting. The thing about the partnership, I think, that's been really important for us in the Lego Foundation, and certainly for me personally as well, being very much involved in this, is how This hasn't just been about a relationship between a grant giver and a receiver, but really a true partnership that's been characterized by a spirit of co-creation and mutual learning. And one that's also really seen BRAC become a champion of learning through play alongside the Lego Foundation. So the thing about the Play Lab models that I think is really interesting and makes it quite unique is the fact that it's a really comprehensive learning through play model. It doesn't just look at play as an add-on, or it's about giving children access to toys or setting aside time for them to play. It's really a learning through play approach that's been integrated into every aspect of the Play Lab model. So it's about the curriculum. It's about the way the teachers, or the play leaders as we call them in the Play Labs, interact with the children. It's about the way they engage the children's caregivers in the surrounding community to help them understand the value of play for children's learning. And it's about the way that the play materials and the physical space itself actually helps to support those learning through play experiences for children. And finally, it's how the research that's being conducted seeks to build evidence for how learning through play supports the development of holistic skills in young children, going back to what we as the Lego Foundation really believe in and feel is important. One thing that's been very interesting in this journey also has been to see the iterations of the Play Lab along the way. When we started out, this was looking at Play Labs based in the communities. From there, it also evolved into being Play Labs that were co-located in government schools, which really has presented a great opportunity to be able to embed the Play Labs within education systems and to try to see how that can spill the impact of learning through play can spread up into the early grades of the education system, the primary education, so that children experience it as a more continuous experience and with pedagogical approaches that are similar. And you'll hear more about that from my colleagues in this part of the session. Then also we have the Humanitarian Play Labs, which we'll hear much more about as well later. And then more recently, or most recently, also a social enterprise model that's really trying to think about addressing the childcare needs of parents. So this is a journey that we've been on for the past 5 years and are continuing on so that more children will be able to benefit from the Play Lab experience and the learning through play. So at this stage, I think if we move to the next slide, please. So I think this is my cue to hand this over to Cassie, who's been part of this journey as well from the beginning, even more before I came on board. So thanks very much, Cassie. And don't forget to tell us about your favorite play activity as well.
Yes, thank you very much, Leslie, for your kind words and your thoughtful reflection on the partnership between BRAC and this journey that we've been on together for the last 5 years. So I had a hard time with this question because I loved all the different types of play, but like Suhani, I landed on thinking about my love of hopscotch, jump rope, and something that we call the pogo stick, which enables you to jump up and down for as many times as you can. And now that I'm all grown up and I think back on it, I realized, which although I didn't realize then, what I was actually learning through these physical games that I played. So I was developing fine motor skills through hopscotch and trying to pick up that stone, all the gross motor skills that you learn from jump rope, math and counting, because I tried to count as many jumps as I could on that pogo stick. But perhaps most importantly through these games was the quality of friendship. And I remember my friends playing these games and the rules that we created together and to form more friendships throughout my early childhood period. So with saying that, and the opportunity is great for me to be with all of you today, I have found my work, like Leslie, with the BRAC team and the LEGO colleagues to be one of the most rewarding and privileged aspect of all my work these many years in early childhood. And as Leslie had mentioned, the work with the Lego Foundation in Bangladesh and BRAC was actually, BRAC had a long history of developing, as one of the leaders in the South Asian area in terms of creating early childhood interventions. As a result of all of this work and their history of ECD interventions, they had already, before we started this partnership, a skilled team of curriculum specialists, of trainers, of service providers. So it was building on those skills and capacity that we developed this successful, what has become this successful Play Lab model. But I think to give a little bit of history, for those of us who have had the privilege to always have been a part of a play-based education, what we still find as we travel around the world in many of the low-income, middle-income countries is this notion of learning through play has not yet really been accepted or welcomed or understood. So this is this opportunity to create this model is really an opportunity to shift our models away from the tremendous focus on cognitive or skill-based or school readiness skills, really looking to what science has taught us, to creating the shift in how we understand and know what it is that helps young children to learn the best. So this play model is really an approach that does that. It's to bring together the science, it's to bring together what we understand of some of the barriers to incorporating play-based learning into some of the systems in the countries where we work. As Leslie mentioned, this model does particularly focused on 3 to 5, 3 to 6, and it is a comprehensive model. Like those of you who are involved in the design of programs, we looked at everything from looking at the curriculum, looking at space and materials, a very strong role thanks to our colleagues from not only Columbia, but from Cambridge as well as the research team from the Lego Foundation to really learn as we went along. It's a process of iteration, a process of refinement, and a process of taking our creativity with us every step along the way. And as where we are now, as we've come to the end of this initial journey, is a focus on how can we scale and sustain this model and bring it to other countries. The next slide, please. So, what we started with, and again, this was an iterative process. This was a model that was based together with our colleagues from a variety of countries, as well as the community leaders, as well as our experts from the 2 consortiums that we developed. And we started with creating a set of principles. Leslie has highlighted many of these already. This notion that learning in early childhood must be child-led. The child is at the center of its learning, and through play creates its own learning opportunities. Very much of a strong focus on not only partnerships with Lego, but other partnerships with our communities, active engagement of those communities and families. Centered right there in that middle circle is creativity and innovation, which still defines how we work. And playfulness, and then this last one, which I think is really BRAC's signature contribution to the field of development, is its intense focus to understand the local cultural heritage and really the norms and the values that families and communities, wherever they are, bring to BRAC's work, and particularly when we're talking about children and families. It's critical to have their voices reflected and represented throughout all of our work. I could have a whole webinar just on our curriculum, but maybe just to highlight a few of the things of our curriculum. It is focusing on a holistic development. We tried, even though it is play-based learning, we're focusing on, of course, the social and emotional, but throughout the play activities, there is a strong focus on the sequence, the age-appropriate and developmental sequence that highlights our early math, numeracy, counting skills, as well as a great focus on early language, literacy, all the pre-reading skills that prepare a child to arrive at school ready to learn. So these are skills that we didn't leave out in this play-based model, model, but we just took a different approach to how we can, together with the child, the caregivers, and the mother volunteers, actually incorporate those into our program. We also, importantly, and this is based on some of the work that was done at Columbia University School of Public Health, was this idea of self-regulation, or it's really attending to the individual's child's ability to understand, listen to directions, hold memories in their mind, design and plan for what it is they want to achieve, and also the self-regulation skills that are very much needed for the play facilitators in order to manage groups of children all trying to play in their own way and on their own style. So this was also very much a part of not only our curriculum, but also looking at the research aspect of this as well. Ideally, it is a 2-year curriculum that children would proceed along very much of an age-based developmental sequence. We focused on both small group learning, whole group learning, of course, free play. And again, one of the things that we try to do, because we are so committed to quality, is to actually set up a routine, a structure, so that no matter what time of the day you went in to visit one of these play labs, you could see the daily structure, whether it was starting with an open meeting or ending with a closing meeting, or ample time for both structured and unstructured play. Our play leaders in the BRAC model, and this is one of the areas that has great flexibility as we adapt the model to new contexts. In the BRAC model, one of the things that was so illuminating and continues to inspire me in my work is this focus on adolescent girls and young women within the community. BRAC also, as was mentioned, is involved in many other social protection programs, one of which is the delay of early marriage. So this gave us an opportunity to link together with the adolescent unit within BRAC to create a new career path for some of these adolescent girls, to delay early onset of marriage. And what we learned in the process was how magnificent they are as the true champions of play-based learning. Their capacity to absorb some of these new ways of thinking and learning with children was really, and continues to be, a highlight of our work. The other piece of that is a focus on training, monitoring, and supervision. And this is, again, one of the things that we recognize are critical to successful models. I think we hear over and over again when people talk about the Play Lab, it comes down to relationships. And this is at the heart of our model. It's relationships between these magnificent young adolescent women learning the skills of child development and group management and their interaction with the children and the families. The next slide, please. I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about, and this is another one of my favorite components. At the very beginning of the initiative, we elicited from BRAC University a set of architects, and this became a critically important part of the program. We, because the community support and engagement was so critical, the play spaces were often identified and given to a community by the community itself. We then embarked on a process of redesigning. For those of you who have perhaps visited early childhood centers in the past, you know how hot they can be, and not attention to light, not looking at it as through a child's eyes. So this focus on the design of the space was really to bring in light, to bring in creativity through looking at some of the traditional ways that homes and spaces were designed using local materials, very much climate conscious, child-friendly, and of course cost-effective. And again, we, together with the architects, have really created some very exciting models for how you can utilize traditional materials. And we focused both on indoor space as well as the outdoor space around the Play Lab itself. Again, we had a great focus on It's hard to do play-based learning without appropriate materials that are developmentally and age-specific. But here again, BRAC and its communities embarked upon a whole new aspect of the program, which is to create low-cost, no-cost, perhaps using local and recycled material to bring in the heritage and the cultural specificity and sensitivity of the communities, to continue to replenish the low-cost materials that are open-ended. They're full of color and life, and give children a chance to explore and really embody the principles of play-based learning. Moving on to the community engagement, which is again a huge component of BRAC's model in all of its work, no matter what sector they're working in. I'd just like to highlight here this role, again, particularly in the Bangladesh Play Labs, was a great focus on the parenting component. In many programs that I visited around the world, the parents perhaps and family members may not be welcome, or there's a time when they can be welcome, but that is not true of the BRAC Play Lab. Parents are encouraged to attend. They provided great help working with children individually, and also it was an opportunity to model for parents how to engage their children in open-ended learning through play. And again, because this is not necessarily a concept that's built into many cultures, this was an opportunity for us and the Play Lab leaders in the community to further develop and to bring home to the children's environment some of the skills and the opportunities to learn through play that they had during the Play Lab Center. I also would like to emphasize here, and this is, I always think of Dr. Aram when I mention this component. It was also a safe place for the mothers to spend their time. Because it was so open and full of color and joy, it provided not only a safe space for children, but also a place for mothers to gather and a place that they could call their own as well. So the next slide, please. So I guess I would be remiss, since I am coming from Columbia University, not to at least have one slide and talking about all the effort and attention, the creativity and flexibility that we put into developing our monitoring and evaluation framework and tools. This was a very, very exciting and creative aspect of our work under the leadership of an external body of some experts in monitoring and evaluation from Cambridge University as well as Columbia, the team from LEGO Foundation and the BRAC University and the researchers there themselves. So we have this range of tools here. As you can see, some of them are focusing more on the traditional aspects of child learning, but some of the others you can see, we particularly were trying to capture the impact on this notion of playfulness, and how is it that this notion of playfulness enhances some of the skills that are more traditionally seen in terms of outcomes of strong quality learning, such as language development, confidence in learning, joy in learning, fine motor development, the ability to understand the basic foundations in early math skills. We also spent a lot of time trying to capture what we consider essential to the model, which is the responsiveness and adult-child, family-child interactions. So we'd love to share more of what we are learning and continuing to learn, but I would just in closing like to highlight two aspects of our research that I found particularly enlightening. One is the capacity to build up local level researchers by the training and some of the innovative ways that we work to develop their capacity to actually understand and implement some of these tools that we have developed. And also the process for local level adaptation and tool validation. This was an extremely important and rewarding component of our work together. So in conclusion, just to highlight what we have accomplished in Bangladesh. The next slide, please. So I think those of you who have had a chance to look at some of BRAC's work throughout its history have noticed that one of its very special claims to fame is its capacity to go to scale. And that is true even within the Play Lab model. So in a very short time, you can see that close to 350 of the community-based Play Lab models that I have been describing have been achieved, reaching to over 21,000, close to 21,000 children. But more importantly, because BRAC also has a very close relationship with the government, the education sector within Bangladesh, they recognize the unique contribution of the Play Lab, and therefore there's an effort now started in 2016 to take this model and try to replicate it, of course, with flexibility and the adaptation that is needed to co-locate the Play Labs within the government-run primary schools. So this is a journey that we are starting and hope to set up close to 1,000 government-located Play Labs. So a tremendous and an exciting journey over the last 5 years. And it has been my great privilege to be a participant along this journey. I would like now to turn to a very special colleague, Mitala, who comes from BRAC International, and she has been working with us over the last years to adapt and implement the program in two very different settings in Uganda and Tanzania. So I'll turn it over now to you, Mitala. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie. First of all, I'm very excited to share my play experience, my childhood play experience, before I get into the exciting opportunity that I got to experience while adapting the Play Lab model in Uganda and Tanzania. So let me share with you my childhood play experience. My favorite play was basically a socio-dramatic play with my friends from my neighborhood, where when we used to play cooking or shopping. I love that socio-dramatic play because I got to choose different roles at different times. Maybe one day I was becoming the shopkeeper, the other day I was becoming the chef. So this is the reason I loved the socio-dramatic play from my childhood. I'm sure many of you also have played this kind of play and enjoyed just like me. So let me focus a little bit on how we have adapted this play model, this Play Lab model in the context of Uganda and Tanzania. So we have implemented this model since 2015 in three contexts: Bangladesh, Uganda, and Tanzania. Although initially the model started in Bangladesh, but starting from 2016, we started adapting this model at first in Uganda, and then during the same time, almost the same time in Tanzania as well in 2016. So let me give you a little bit of context of Uganda. The Ugandan context in terms of their ECD policy, learning framework, early learning and development standards, all those things are in place. All those national documents are in place. However, there is very little investment in the ECD sector. And the ECD there, especially early childhood education, is 3 years pre-primary, they call it, under the Ministry of Education. Although, you'd find very few early learning centers or pre-primary centers under or within the government primary schools. Mostly the private sector is investing, and the private sector is providing the early learning services, the 3 years pre-primary in the context of Uganda. Despite that, the enrollment rate, as you can see, only 10%, especially among the 3 to 5 year old children, which is very, very low. Since in the context of Uganda, the policies are there, the frameworks are there. Many other organizations, especially the non-government organizations, they are implementing ECD in the context of Uganda. But ours is a unique model, which the adaptation process. I'm going to explain it in my next slide. Can we change the slide? Thank you. In Uganda, we started with the. Can you go back to the previous slide? Thank you. In Uganda, we implemented 120 play labs in Karamoja, Central Uganda, and Kampala. The initial adaptation process started with the curriculum adaptation, because the curriculum is the core of the play lab model. And definitely along with the curriculum, we also had to design the space, as Cassie mentioned, and also worked on the material development according to the context of Uganda. So a team from BRAC, Institute of Educational Development, along with our program team from BRAC International and the Uganda country team, we all started this curriculum adaptation process with a national stakeholder workshop, where we invited the government, the Ministry of Education, because the early learning for 3 to 6-year-old children is basically under the responsibility of the Ministry of Education. And we have also invited the other organizations who are working in the field of ECD in Uganda. We have invited Aga Khan Foundation, Plan International, and many other organizations who were working in the field of ECD. So along with all these stakeholders, we have also invited our staff, our existing staff from the education program, our teachers, our our program staff. So along with all of them, the first thing that we did, we reviewed all the existing national documents. We reviewed the early learning and development standards. We reviewed all the national ECD policy. We also reviewed the international documents as well. And then the first thing that we came up with was the curriculum framework for the context of Uganda. And after the curriculum framework, after we all agreed on that curriculum framework, and it was mainly endorsed by the government, then we started working on the play activities. And here, the most interesting part is that we work very closely with our existing staff who had very close connection with the communities. So they brought in their experience of the local culture and the local play, and we basically all our play activities in the curriculum for the Play Lab model in Uganda are local play and local games. So initially we developed the 2-month curriculum, and after that our team, they went back to the field. We went through an iterative process while developing the first year curriculum for 3 to 4-year-old children. So this Play Lab curriculum, as Cassie mentioned, it's a age appropriate curriculum, and the first year in 2016 we only worked on the 3 to 4 curriculum, and then we moved towards the 4 to 5. And while doing that, we went through a lot of iterative processes. We used to develop the activities, and our staff used to go to the field and get the feedback from the parents, from the children, and then come back, and we used to again refine those activities. So this is how we developed the entire Play Lab curriculum in the context of Uganda. And then along with the curriculum, as Cassie mentioned, we have also developed the M&E framework, and we adapted so many research tools to monitor the quality and the learning assessment of the children and the quality of the Play Lab. Initially, we started with 40 Play Labs, and then by 2018, we scaled it up to 120 Play Labs. Excuse me. The main lessons learned from the context of Uganda was firstly the competency of the play leaders. They have adapted the curriculum so well, along with since they were from the very beginning, many of them were involved in the curriculum development process, that they were part of that curriculum and they were implementing it, working with the children. So many of them, they actually said that they have evolved with that curriculum. And The play leaders competency, to develop the play leaders competency, we have provided the initial basic training of 6 days, and then they used to come back for monthly refreshers. And they also went through this iterative process where they gradually sort of got into the curriculum. By playing with the children at the play lab, they got the gist of the curriculum eventually. And many of our play leaders later, when the play labs phased out, they actually work as caregivers because there is a lack of trained caregiver and ECD practitioners or teachers in the context of Uganda. There is the second lesson that we learned is that what really worked for us while adapting the model in the context of Uganda is working with the local government. As we have worked with the local government, among the 3 countries, Uganda was the first country which started co-locating the play lab within the government primary school. And from 2017, we started co-locating the play labs with the government primary schools. And, we received a lot of support from the government, from the local government, and also the primary school. The primary school head teachers, they took the responsibility of monitoring our play labs. They used to share with us that how they're also learning how to engage children in a very child-friendly, play-based manner. And since we also had to design the play spaces, both indoor and outdoor, a lot of children from the primary school, they were coming back to the play spaces and playing. And some of the head teachers were saying that they don't want to leave the school premise now. So this co-location with the government, that has helped us in sustaining the play labs, after the 2 years intervention that we provided. And many of the around 76 government schools, they showed their interest of adapting the play labs and the model, and they wanted to implement it in their school premises. So that is one of the biggest learning that we got. And the third is the involvement and the engagement of the parents, because initially we saw that the parents, they were not, they were all working, and they were not very keen on coming to the play labs or being engaged, because one of the very important component of our play lab is the engagement of the parents. So the way we try to engage the parents, and later we were successful in engaging all of the parents, and we found that about more than 80% of parents were actually playing with their children at home, and they were making play materials for their children after implementing for a couple of years. This is the monitoring finding that we have. So initially we were not seeing that parents were keen on coming and spending sessions in play labs because they had to go to their work. So what we did is we made a roster where we say that, okay, we have 30 kids and at least 30 parents we would get. So if you come once a month and spend the full session with your children at the play lab, that would be sufficient for us. So it was very feasible for the parents as well. Like, okay, if once a month I have to come and spend the whole session, that was fine with them. So that's how they started. Slowly they started engaging, and as they came and started spending time with their children at the play lab, they became more enthusiastic in coming. And gradually we found that not one, but more than one, like 2 or 3 parents, they were trying to manage their time to come and spend their time in the play lab, supporting the play leaders and their children. And one of the biggest achievement is that the play material development. These parents were bringing the materials from their home, whatever they could, and they were coming. And every quarter, it was like a festive event that was happening around the play lab, where they used to bring food and all the materials from their home, and they used to make the play materials for their children and for the play lab. And in some of the quarters we used to get so much material that we had to find a space to store those materials. So that's how we engage the parents, and definitely the parents, they also have been through monthly parenting sessions, which have also been very helpful for them, at least from the monitoring and research finding that we could tell. So these are the key learning from the Play Lab adaptation and implementation in the context of Uganda. Now I would like to move forward to Tanzania. Um, next slide, please. Um, the Tanzanian context is very different from the Ugandan context. In Tanzania, the pre-primary is the 1-year pre-primary for 5 to 6-year-old children, which is under the Ministry of Education. But the early childhood education for 3 to 5-year-old children falls under the Ministry of Health, Community Development, Gender, Elders, and Children. And the Department of Social Welfare under that ministry is responsible for that age group. So we found that there was basically for 3 to 5-year-old children, there is no curriculum. There is no approved national ECD policy. There is no approved learning framework. There is no approved ELDS in the context of Tanzania. And only 47% of children are enrolled in pre-primary. So the data for 3 to 5, the pre-primary means 5 to 6-year-old children, but the data for below 5 is also, it's not easy to find, because since it does not fall under the Ministry of Education. And also we found in the context of Tanzania that there is a severe lack of trained teachers for pre-primary. So and also in the pre-primary schools, which is basically within the primary school, it's under the universal primary education, the 1-year pre-primary that Tanzania has. The teacher-student ratio is also very, very high. So the curriculum adaptation process, can we go to the next slide? The curriculum adaptation process in the context of Tanzania was a little bit different from Uganda, because there, as I said, that we did not find any national document which we could sort of follow and base our curriculum on. Because in the context of Uganda, there was the ELDS and learning framework, so we could follow those national standards to develop the curriculum. But in the context of Tanzania, what we had to do first is we conducted a similar national stakeholder workshop where we invited both of the ministries, the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of the Department of Social Welfare under the Ministry of Health, Community Development, Gender, Elders, and Children. And we have also invited the other stakeholders who have been implementing ECD in the context of Tanzania, like Right to Play, Aga Khan Foundation, and many others. So, and there we have also included the Tanzania Education Network and Tanzania ECD Network very strongly, because those networks have been playing a very strong role in the educational context in Tanzania. So there, what we had to do first was we had to review the ELDS and learning framework from many neighboring countries. We reviewed the Ugandan ELDS, we reviewed the Bangladesh ELDS, as well as some of the ELDS from some of the other African countries. And through that workshop, we initially had to come up with the learning standards based on which we would develop the curriculum. And by vetting that learning standards with all those stakeholders, especially the government, we started our curriculum adaptation work. And it was a similar process like Uganda that we followed in the context of Tanzania. So I am not going to go through talk about the same process again. But we worked very closely with the national government, the central government, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of the Social Welfare Department, and also we worked with the national networks, the Education Network and ECD Network very, very closely. So as there was no,
Nicola,
there is a,
this
sorry.
is Devin speaking. Sorry to interrupt you. I think that we're going to need to move along because we're running quite behind on time. So if you
yeah, I'm going to finish in 1 minute. Then I'm just going to focus now on the lesson learned from Tanzania. as I was saying that since there is a lack of investment, as well as there is lack in terms of technical and financial resources in the context of Tanzania, when we started developing a curriculum, the government showed interest in adapting the Play Lab curriculum for 3 to 5 year children as a national curriculum in the context of Tanzania. And this is one of the main achievements so far through the advocacy work that we have done nationally in Tanzania. Another lesson learned is also we are also in the process of co-locating in government schools in Tanzania, just like Uganda. So we are getting a lot of support, and this has been a very amazing journey adapting this Play Lab model in the context of Uganda and Tanzania. And I will keep talking about it as you have heard that I'm running late already. I'm very enthusiastic about talking about Play Labs in Uganda and Tanzania. And so I would like to end here. If you have any question, you can send it to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mitilapa. Actually, for the interest of time, we're going to skip a little bit forward, and we'll take the questions to the very end. So for our next segment it is the Humanitarian Play Lab model, which is an adaptation of our original Play Lab model developed in response to the Rohingya refugee crisis in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh. To share some brief context before I introduce our presenters, in August 2017, approximately 1 million Rohingya people arrived in Bangladesh, having fled persecution in Myanmar. Most of them had just experienced severe trauma after having seen their family and community members get killed or been separated during their escape, and approximately 55% of the arriving population were children. In 1972, Sir Abid had left his career and life in London because he felt disconnected and wanted to return to his home in post-war stricken Bangladesh and wanted to help build Bangladesh and develop the country. So for him, it was a deep sense of duty and BRAC's responsibility to support the displaced Rohingya community, and BRAC was one of the first responders to provide support. I will now request our presenters, Saida Sazia Zaman from BRAC, Abby Bukavalis from Sesame Workshop, and Ira Mariam to share the story of the Humanitarian Play Lab.
Thank you, Suhani. Thank you so much. This is Sadia Zaman from BRAC. And here I love to share one of my favorite childhood activity, which I used to play. I used to play one activity that is hide and seek with my siblings, my cousins, and later on I love to play that similar activity with my nieces and nephews. And later part of my life, I love to play with my daughter as well. And still I love it. Still I love it. So I welcome you all in this part of the presentation in HPL. First, I will focus on how we started. In fact, how we started our journey in the humanitarian response in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh. Initially, worked in the child protection sector and child-friendly spaces. In fact, the child protection sector and child-friendly spaces were BRAC entry points, and for BRAC entry points for ECD in humanitarian setting in Cox's Bazar. And initially, we started engaging children in these child-friendly spaces, and were providing children a space to play and where they express their emotions, and which helped them feel safe. And this was our starting point in October 2017, and we started with 3 objectives, like all children should be safe, preserving their culture, and nurturing children's spontaneity. Then actually we started working and collected all the safety messages to ensure children's safety. We got several responses from the parents and from the community, and got several responses from the community, particularly what are the messages we should include here. So few messages they mention, the parents and the community will then mention like need to care elders, need to love and care siblings, and also nurturing friendship, need to be together, and including health, hygiene, this type of messages, etc. And in fact, though, for the safety, we had the sectoral protocol and also messages, but we spoke to the community and found that they found their thoughts on the important messages, what should be shared with their children. That is so important, because these children, belong from that community. And what happened that children, all the parents, they share all the messages they share. And next slide, please. And so what are the contents we have collected from the culture and the community? That is our approach to learning through play. And this learning through play promotes skill in all the integrated domains of child development. And for example, play in therapeutic, including play foster the resilience. Children can heal and learn through play. Can you just backslide? Can you stay in the backslide, please? Thank you. So throughout this process of discovery, discovery and exploration, HPL model is adapted in the Rohingya, based on the Rohingya culture. Please backslide, please. So adapted Rohingya culture, we went to the children, parents, and community and asked them about their play activity from their culture, and what are the children used to play in their existing community. And we collected all the play activity from them, and we found that, and we discovered that children, they mentioned the rhyme, what they call like the kaibya, and like the story, they mentioned the kissa. Very unique, some physical activity, also some very unique pattern of art, free play, and all these pieces they mentioned. And we reviewed, we followed the similar the process which we followed in the play lab, in our mainstream and other part, what Dr. Cassie and Nithila shared. We followed all the process, iteration, the curriculum and the refinement. And we reviewed and developed the curriculum based on all this collective activity and the routine, which looks like here. You already, you can see from here. And we found that the children like this activity very much. Even the parents, they like this activity very much. And here I want to highlight that play leader, who are the who are facilitating this HPL session. Basically, they designed this routine. So throughout this discovery process, we asked play leader what would be the best design for the HPL routine, even the sequence and the duration of each segments. For example, like the welcome session, what would be the best things in the welcome session? What would be the under the kaibya, I mean the rhyme, or the kissa, I mean the story. So we asked to them to set that routine and the curriculum throughout complete that development process. Then finally we have reviewed this curriculum with our international experts. And throughout this process, we reviewed all the documents in on national level. We have draft ELDS and all the global documents we reviewed. And from the international expert, we got Dr. Cassie Landans and few of our friends from the global part. And we combine the healing through play and also like the learning and learning framework in healing framework combined together and fit in all the play activity which you got from this community. And that is so important for us. Next slide, please. Learning through play, obviously. Next slide, please. So here I want to highlight that the BRAC works with the women from the Rohingya community to engage children in playful learning, and also this playful learning. But what is important here, BRAC always we try to engage the Rohingya play leader, also the young girls and all the women here. and develop the pedagogy of playfulness and follow all the process. The model provide lots of opportunity for the girls from the Rohingya community. In fact, there were certain play, those were only for the girls, and those there are also certain play for boys. We wanted and tried that all children to play all play activity, and we wanted girls to take the leadership. And finally, what happened that after some time they started working like that. And most importantly here, that we throughout this version, throughout this pedagogy, what we found that the play leader, they are the most important person here, and because they are from their community, they know the culture, they know the children, and they know all the Rohingya dialect, and they are so important throughout this process of this design. And finally, I want to just make some final comments that we know that obviously there are differences between girls and boys, but but we looked at those and focused on how we can engage girls here and boys in the different type of activity. And there are really opportunity for the Rohingya play leader and also the young women. And another important point for us, that is all the things we did, we think that all the approaches to engage play leader, children, or the girls, this work for every aspect of this model. For example, bottom-up approach, engaging, evolving the play leader, children, and young women, and bringing community voice. That is so important. And the capacity development of the play leader, all the frontliners, and also the high attendance of the children in the age field. And these worked, all this worked actually. And in my last concluding remarks, I just finally I want to flag most exciting milestone of this play to learn project partnership. And now I will hand over to my colleague Abby from Sesame Workshop to continue the session. Thank you all.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk today. Thank you to BRAC and to the CPC Learning Network. I'm very excited to be here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Play to Learn project, which has been able to leverage some of the amazing Play Lab work that's been discussed so far. Basically, Play to Learn is a project that's grounded in partnership. So before I get into kind of how we're partnering and what that means for children and for learning materials, I just want to quickly cover the partnership. So our partners are, of course, Sesame Workshop, which is the nonprofit organization behind Sesame Street. We work all around the world on, on multiple media platforms. And basically what we're trying to do is help children everywhere grow smarter, stronger, and kinder. We're very excited, of course, to have this partnership with BRAC through the Play to Learn project and hopefully beyond, where we are, able to leverage BRAC's extraordinary experience on the ground in the Rohingya response region. We're honored to be learning from their capacity and their expertise in their play-based, culturally rooted humanitarian play lab model, and we're very excited to see how all of our work continues to unfold and evolve over the next several years. This is very much a learning partnership, and so we're able to kind of experiment and see what's working and see what's well received by the community and continue to grow from there. We are also working with IRC within the International Rescue Committee, of course, benefiting from their tremendous knowledge around refugee response work around the world. We're partnering with NYU Global Ties for Children as an evaluation partner. So really to make sure that not only are we learning from what works and what doesn't, but that we're able to share that more broadly with the humanitarian sector and other sectors who are interested. And last but certainly not least, we're very excited to be working with the LEGO Foundation on this. Well beyond funding, we truly are partnered with LEGO Foundation as a thought partner, figuring out how we can really make decisions together in a way that ultimately benefits international learning, that benefits children in the Rohingya response region and beyond. Next slide, please. So the Play to Learn project, it has a very bold vision. It's a very big project, but ultimately what we're trying to do is deliver quality play-based ECD direct services, that are bolstered where possible by media content to children and communities that are affected by the Rohingya and Syrian humanitarian crises. We are creating 4 sets of globally tested and reviewed video content blocks, and I'll talk a bit more about how we're partnering with and collaborating with BRAC on that. And our hope is that much of this content will be usable across different humanitarian crises in different geographies. We're developing a suite of evidence-based humanitarian ECD program delivery approaches. So the idea is that we'll learn together, we'll experiment together, and ultimately we'll be able to extract best practices from the work that we're doing and share that with the humanitarian sector. And of course, there's an advocacy component. So, we're looking to catalyze change in global systems policy and practice. And really what we want to see is ECD as fundamental, not an afterthought, but as truly fundamental to humanitarian response. Next slide, please. I'm going to sort of, for the sake of time, jump right into some of the detail now about how we're partnering with BRAC and how we're working with them to develop learning materials that are culturally grounded, but that are leveraging the best of Sesame and our Muppet characters for use in the Humanitarian Play Labs. So we embarked on this process about a year ago. And basically, I think what's most important to share is, Sesame and BRAC both have experience and backgrounds in content creation. And so figuring out how to do that together at every step of the way has been really wonderful and exciting. And I think we've been able to do so without adding too much to the timeline, which is, of course, always a consideration. So we worked together through the approach and topic selection for a set of storybooks as our sort of launch into content co-creation. And what we really wanted to do was agree on, okay, how are we going to develop these books together, knowing that it's taking place across geographies, across time zones, and across organizations? And what topics do we want to select and prioritize from our project curriculum, from the Play to Learn curriculum for this initial batch of books? What we ended up doing was holding a writer's workshop in Bangladesh, where we could really sort of work with writers firsthand, writers from Sesame, writers from BRAC, about the curriculum and about our characters and what we were hoping to accomplish through these books. From there, we conducted illustrator workshops, which actually involved illustrators who are based in Bangladesh, but some of our character artists who are based in New York were able to video chat in and conduct some training on, how do you draw Elmo and what are the proportions of Elmo's face? And so that was really exciting and fun, I think, for all of us. And then from there, BRAC really led some field testing, making sure that these stories and these plans and these characters were going to resonate with the Rohingya community. So that was really wonderful to sort of hear how those books were received and what favorite and least favorite parts of those stories were before they were then ready for integration into the Humanitarian Play Labs. And of course, we made sure that both partners were on board with a final product, that everyone felt good about what was ultimately accomplished. Next slide, please. These are a couple of the books that were created. So one called Colorful Birds and one called Dalim Kumar. The books are, we developed them in English and in Rohingya language. And so that was really challenging as well, because Rohingya language, it doesn't have a standardized written form. And so we had a lot of back and forth about how we wanted to transcribe those books and make sure that those stories were ready for use in the Humanitarian Play Labs and ready to be read and told to children by the play leaders. So that was a really fun process. These books really intend to reflect local culture and sort of life as it's familiar to Rohingya children. They intend to leverage the Sesame characters. You see Elmo in both books, and you see Elmo's mom peeking out in the Dalim Kumar book. And really, they're looking to have educational impact. So to emphasize Colorful Birds emphasizes color recognition as well as counting and one-to-one correspondence from the numeracy part of our curriculum. And Dalim Kumar emphasizes hand washing and food hygiene from the health and safety part of our curriculum. So, while those don't necessarily have explicit child protection objectives, access to early education and to health are critically important for supporting young children's ongoing development in humanitarian contexts. And so we do see all of these things as sort of as intrinsically important to early childhood development and to what's happening in the ECD space within humanitarian response. Next slide, please. That being said, we are actually working together, BRAC and Sesame and our other partners. We're collaborating closely on a set of videos that will have explicit child protection and safety goals. So I think that's really worth mentioning as well. We are working with experts. We're working with multiple partners to try to create these videos in a way that allow them to resonate for Rohingya children who are attending humanitarian play labs, but also then ultimately that where they may resonate for children in other contexts. And these are videos that we think might even have relevance beyond humanitarian contexts and in other types of development settings and other types of work. So that's very, very exciting. Because it's sort of Sesame's area of expertise, we are certainly taking the lead on the actual creating, the execution or production of these videos, but the planning and development is deeply collaborative. And really, we wouldn't be able to do this without our close collaboration with BRAC as well as IRC and child protection experts. The majority of the videos will include child and adult characters to stress the importance of the caregiver role in child protection. But the videos will also aim to empower children with age-appropriate knowledge and actions. So you can sort of see our curricular objectives around who you are and around safety and protection on this slide. And you can kind of imagine how we might be aiming to distill some key child protection messages for very young children, for children ages 3 to 6 years old, and to help to give them sort of actions and information that allow them to contribute to their own safety. And I do not want to say that to downplay the role of caregivers and societies and governments. Obviously, those are critical, but child empowerment, empowering children to feel like they have a sense of agency, particularly in unstable contexts, is so core to what Sesame aims to do, and of course to what BRAC aims to do, and what the Play to Learn project aims to do. So even though these are big, heavy topics for young children, we're going to do our best to address them not only in age-appropriate ways, but also in ways that celebrate the natural playfulness of children. We know that children play everywhere, even in really, really difficult situations. And so we're really looking to leverage Sesame characters and to leverage sort of what's innate to children everywhere. And on that note, I'm happy to turn things back over to Iram Appa, so she can further discuss sort of how BRAC has integrated play into their humanitarian work with the concept of play having healing power. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Abby. We truly, truly value the partnership with Sesame. I'll take you now to 2017. It was October, and we asked children in the child-friendly spaces what they wanted to do, what they wanted to show us. And they stood and they were doing the rhymes and the kabbia, and suddenly we find the community, their grandparents and moms and dads and siblings all surround that child-friendly space. And it was such a powerful moment. And later on, we went and asked our psychologist friends what happened about this powerful moment. And this is what they said, that it was through the kabbiyas that the children connected with their community. And it was through the kabbiya that when the children connected with the community, that there was a whole uplifting. And that is what was the powerful moment, that through the kabbiyas the children felt uplifted, and through the kabbiyas the community felt uplifted. So this discovery actually really made us explore further into the cultural elements of stories, the kissa, and the rich physical play and the art. And we discovered that craft and cloth on the ceiling, these were all kept in every Rohingya home in Myanmar. And we understood that all of this rich play and art and craft and the cloth on the ceiling gives a sense of pride and belonging to the children and the community. And so we just continued with this exploration of the culture. This actually formed the very basic core of the Healing Through Play framework. The second point is what we did is, once we could identify this culture and the healing through play framework, we actually asked all our psychologists to look into this positive experiences of play and the therapeutic element of play and what play was doing. And we were absolutely amazed what play was doing. What play did was, in addition to that rich learning through play pedagogy, play was providing positive experiences to the children and not only enhancing their socio-emotional development, but through this experience, it also impacted caregivers, it impacted play leaders. So what in fact we found was, this therapeutic element of play actually impacted the child, the caregiver, and the play leader. And what we are doing is, this is what this core framework of healing through play, we are trying to intensively dig deeper into it and refine it. So, in addition to the learning through play pedagogy, we think that its extension into healing through play is also so very important. The third point I just want to mention, and the next slide, please, is, we also developed a system of psychosocial support. We recruited community women, we trained them, and we tried to develop the quality standards, the ethical standards, and we also made it culturally relevant. And it was the community women who became para-counselors. And so through the para-counselors, we developed a system of psychosocial support so that every child in the community, every caregiver in the community can access psychosocial support. So, this is the story of the healing through play, that we dug deep into the culture. We found belongingness and pride to the culture, and we added a lot of the socio-emotional development implications. We're trying to develop this healing through play framework, and we absolutely stepped up the access to psychosocial support through a system. So, Suhani, over to you.
Thank you, Ramappa. For the interest of time, since the next segment, you're sharing the key learnings, I would just like to request that you stay on and share the key learnings with us.
So, in 2005, Abid Bhai asked us to go to Italy to find out about play-based ECD. I met him before his death in December 2020. I met him in October. And even, in my last interaction with him, he said to continue working on play and to continue working on children's confidence so that every child can match her or his aspiration. Abid Bhai was an absolute guru in development and the biggest promoter of play-based ECD. One of his mantras was iterations and drawing from lessons. So I take this opportunity to draw on the lessons that we have. Mithila, of course, elaborated very beautifully the lessons from Uganda and Tanzania, but we have 5. The next slide, please. Suhani, the next slide, please. So the 5 lessons that we have is, let's take opportunities. First, in the humanitarian architecture, let's take the opportunity to do ECD in any sector that we can get access to, whether it is health or education and child protection. Let's go into any sector or all, because ECD is so important. Number 2, let's take the opportunity of really developing the learning through play pedagogy, because it really works. And let's also integrate healing through play. The third is, we have all talked about the importance of relationship. Cassie mentioned the importance of relationships. Let us take the opportunity to invest in play leaders. Play leaders transform themselves and they transform children. Number 4, let us take opportunity to work with government in anything, whether co-locating, workshop or training, anything. Number 5, let us take opportunity to work in partnerships. Here we are all about partnerships. This is what we showcase today in this webinar, that we are very, very strong partners. And let's take opportunity of all the partnerships with different organizations, foundations, academic institutions, and also networking organizations, Bangladesh ECD Network, a very vibrant ECD working group in Cox's Bazar, because partnerships makes us learn so much more, makes our experience so much richer, and makes our model so much more meaningful. Thank you. Over to you, Suhani.
Thank you so much. Continuing on that note of strengthening our work through partnerships, I will request our next presenters, Devin McClure and Devin McClure from BRAC and Anita Anastasia from the Lego Foundation to share more on our efforts for advocacy for play-based learning.
Thank you so much, Suhani, and hi, everybody. My name is Devin McClure, and I want to start by sharing my favorite playful memory as a child, which honestly still continues to be one of my favorite things to do today, and that is definitely climbing trees. I think there's something about the accomplishment of getting higher and higher in the trees that are most familiar to me as a child, and then also to exploring new places from the view kind of high up in the air is always really exhilarating. So speaking of reaching new heights, you can go to the next slide, please, Suhani. I'm here to talk a little bit more about BRAC's advocacy efforts at the national and global levels. So, you know, working with government partnership has always been part of BRAC's DNA, but global advocacy is a newer area for us. So I think that Mithila Appa did a great job of really covering a lot of the advocacy related work that we are doing in Tanzania and Uganda. But I do want to share that in Bangladesh, we are really excited that we have been able to significantly scale up our work with play labs in 400 government schools and government primary schools, which helps us to facilitate the transition for these young children into pre-primary school and then on to primary school. We're also working in partnership with the government, similarly to what we're doing in Tanzania, to really advocate for centering play in the national curriculum and making it a core component. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that global advocacy is a bit of a newer space for us. We're really excited that to be deeply engaged in a lot of the collective efforts to influence policymakers and ECD stakeholders around the world. And the groups below are some of the platforms that we are engaging with. The Moving Minds Alliance, I'll start there, is a collaborative of donors that are focused on early childhood development and emergencies, and they have invited a core group of civil society organizations and multilaterals to advocate for the importance of early childhood development in emergency settings. So as many of you probably know, education writ large receives relatively few resources in crisis settings, just about 2% of humanitarian funding overall, and ECD explicitly is much less than that. So we're working with Moving Minds to help develop and roll out our collective advocacy strategy for young children in crisis in order to help influence policymakers, decision makers around the world to increase support to early childhood development and emergencies. And similarly, we're also represented on the Interagency Network for Education and Emergencies Early Childhood Development Task Team, where we're contributing to global efforts to collate the tools, resources, and evidence needed to support early childhood education and emergencies. I'm also delighted to share that we recently worked with Their World to identify global champions for early childhood development, one of whom is Saima Wazed Hussain, who is the daughter of Bangladesh's Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. And we're really proud that we were able to use our position as BRAC in Bangladesh to help support that high-level championing of early childhood development. Next slide, please, Suhani. So on to scale and sustainability. We're currently developing BRAC's global early childhood development strategy with the support of some truly spectacular consultants, including our dear friend, Cassie Landers. And what you see here on the slide are a few approaches that we intend to use to really reach scale and to sustain our support of the development and learning of many more children. So one approach that I'll touch upon that we're planning for is the provision of technical assistance through partnerships with governments, other NGOs, and multilaterals and ECD stakeholders. We really anticipate that this is going to allow us to bring playful learning to children living in countries outside of BRAC's current geographic scope, as well as to countries where we currently do not have education programming. So I think I'm going to stop there and hand it over to my dear colleague, Anita Anastasio, who is the Senior Program Specialist and the lead for the Play to Learn program at the LEGO Foundation. Over to you, Anita.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Devin. We at the LEGO Foundation are really pleased to be part of this opportunity for BRAC to showcase their incredible journey and work on supporting young children with playful learning opportunities. I will make it quick because we are late. I support our humanitarian portfolio at the LEGO Foundation, which includes these impressive EC early childhood interventions, the evidence creation and the advocacy work that BRAC and also Sesame Workshop have showcased. As I have been waiting for my turn and getting more and more anxious, rather than telling you about my favorite play moment, take a look what I've done. Can you see that? Just so, this is my favorite unicorn. And this is my favorite, well, you can imagine what it is. In any case, what I felt happened, it calmed me down, maybe to some extent. I will make it brief. As you can see on the slide, I try to highlight a little bit what we do in the at the LEGO Foundation's work and why we do what we do, because we think it's very much in line with the promise of the 2030 agenda and the SDGs that have been about leaving no one behind and reaching out to those furthest behind. We are very proud to be partnering with BRAC, Sesame Workshop, and the International Rescue Committee and many others in this important space, and see the leadership to bring spotlight to issues that young children who are in crisis contexts are facing right now. The foundation is committed to complementing existing efforts that support children affected by crisis. We think it's vital that humanitarian responses not only focus on children's immediate needs for protection, healthcare, adequate nutrition, clean water, but also recognize that children affected by crisis more than ever need the opportunities to play and learn. We believe that play supports children's psychological, emotional, and cognitive health and development, and it hones the resilience they need to thrive and build their future. It also provides comfort and helps them to turn to routines and normalcies of being a child. Thank you. I think I leave it here because we have very little time. And again, thank you so much for all the work, BRAC and Sesame and others that you are doing every day to make the life of children better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anita. In the interest of time, we did not get around to questions, but there is one really important question that we think is very relevant to this time at the moment that we didn't get around to addressing in our presentation, and that is our adaptation to the current crisis of COVID. I would like to ask Dr. Ira Mariam to share a quick overview of BRAC's adaptation to the COVID crisis.
Thank you, Suhani. Well, when the COVID started, we thought that, it cannot be that we are not connected to the children. So we explored the telecommunication technology, mobile phones, and we explored it in the Rohingya camps as well as everywhere else that we worked. And we found that, there was a lot of interest. So we basically leveraged on this on this mobile technology, mobile to mobile, and we leveraged on what we have, the relationship that Cassie was talking about. And so we developed and trained our play leaders on on communication through phone. So what we called it is Pashe Achi, that means to be beside you. And in this beside you Pashe Achi concept, we have a 20-minute phone call every week to every caregiver and child that we serve. And the play leader calls the caregiver and speaks to the caregiver and also speaks to the child. But essentially the 20-minute teleconversation that we have, that is based on healing of the caregiver as well as on the knowledge of play-based pedagogy and the knowledge on how to engage with her child through play. And so that's been the 20-minute teleconversation, 10 minutes on healing of caregivers, and 10 minutes on how best to engage with the child through play. So this is something that we've been doing for the past 5 months. We find increasingly that the caregivers and the children love it. And what we have is that the caregivers tell us that they feel connected. And they say that, you know, in this COVID, where there was a crisis, we were there for them. So that's Pashe Achi for you. And we are very, very excited to see this overwhelming response from the caregivers and from the children and also from the play leaders, because the play leaders said through Pashe Achi, they felt valued. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Iram. We're just at the top of the hour and we don't want to hold you back anymore, but as you can see, we could go on forever and discussing the story of Play Labs. I would really like to thank all of our presenters today for sharing their story in the wonderful journey of the Play Labs and for the strong partnership in dedication to the positive development of children. We hope that you enjoyed learning about the story of the Play Labs just as much as we enjoyed sharing our story with you. We will definitely be sure to get back. We got a lot of interesting questions that we would love to reply to, along with forwarding the recording of today's session. Thank you once again for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you.